The chaos of the party, where everyone laughed too loudly and drank too much, became the backdrop for something that was meant to be just a joke. But one harmless truth or dare, and everything went wrong. He heard her answer, squeezed out between laughter and fake smiles, as if it was just another friendly jab. But what if there was something more hidden in those words? What if the jokes concealed a crack that had been growing silently within their marriage? Sometimes you don't need screams, betrayal, or drama, just a single offhand comment to break everything apart. And when a person finally realizes the truth, only one question remains. How far are they willing to go to become themselves again? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watch this video from. Now, let's get started. There comes a moment in every man's life when he feels something deep within him give way. For me, that realization struck on a Saturday evening, at a party I hadn't wanted to attend. My wife, Claire, insisted we go. It was Mira's birthday, one of Claire's colleagues. She spent close to an hour getting ready, half of which was dedicated to critiquing my outfit and deliberating over which shirt made me appear less boring. That should have been my first clue. The party itself was chaos. Unfamiliar faces, booming voices, everyone clutching drinks and laughing far too loudly at things that weren't funny. Then Mira, already tipsy and grinning like she had a secret to share, suggested we play truth or dare. Juvenile, but we played along. It was all harmless, until Mira, her eyes gleaming with mischief, turned to Claire and asked, "Truth, if you could trade Gavin for anyone else, who would it be?" The crowd chuckled, expecting a punchline. I waited, smiling politely. Claire, flashing a grin too bright to be real, flipped her hair and replied, "Trade? Easy. Elias from spin class. He actually listens." The table roared. Someone spilled a drink. Mira screeched with laughter like it was comedy gold. I laughed too. The hollow kind you use to protect yourself when your dignity's been gutted in front of an audience. Sometimes you laugh because it's the only way to hide the sting. Claire gave me a cheeky wink, like it was all in fun. I bit down on every word I wanted to say and raised my glass instead. A silent toast to the art of swallowing humiliation. From that point on, the night faded into static. Claire kept drinking, kept joking. And right on cue, Elias walked in. Her whole face lit up, a spark I hadn't seen in ages. I stood at the edge of it all, holding a drink I had no intention of finishing, wondering when I'd stopped being the central figure in my own life. The ride home was steeped in silence. No argument, no accusations, just the sound of my grip tightening on the steering wheel until my hands throbbed. She sat beside me, scrolling through her phone, softly humming some tune like the night had been nothing out of the ordinary. That was the moment I felt it for certain. Something between us had shifted, and we couldn't unshift it. The garage door groaned closed behind us. Claire stepped out first, heels dangling from one hand before she reached the door. I followed. Inside, she tossed her purse on the counter and headed straight for the fridge. She grabbed a water bottle like she hadn't just taken a sledgehammer to my pride. Without turning, she said, "You're mad." Leaning against the doorway, I said, "Not mad, just trying to figure out when I turned into the joke." She gave a low, bitter laugh. "It was a game. Don't be so dramatic." I watched her twist off the cap like none of it mattered. "You picked Elias." She waved it off. "It was a joke. Don't overthink it." "You really mean that?" At last she turned, her eyes narrowed. "Seriously, Gavin? You're turning this into a thing?" She exhaled hard. "You've been emotionally checked out for months. Maybe if you paid attention once in a while, I wouldn't have to make stupid jokes." There it was, the first clean hit. I crossed my arms, kept my tone even. "Are you talking to him?" Something flickered in her expression, faint but undeniable. And if I was, she snapped, would you even notice? You haven't seen me in months. You barely look up when I walk into the room. I pushed off the door frame, stepping toward her. You're right. I didn't notice. Not until tonight. She set the bottle down with more force than needed. You're being ridiculous. Elias is just a friend. I said nothing. Just watched her. That silence made her flinch like I'd shouted. We're just stuck, Gavin, she said, voice dropping. Every couple goes through rough patches. This isn't a patch, I said quietly. This is you preparing your exit. She opened her mouth, searching for a reply, but nothing came. Instead, she turned away, pretending to straighten a pile of unopened mail, adjusting a vase that didn't need adjusting. I didn't add another word, just walked upstairs. The next morning, I woke alone. Her side of the bed was already cool. That was all the confirmation I needed. We weren't lost in a temporary slump. We were broken. The days that followed were a quiet parade of avoidance. Minimal words, only logistics, bills, groceries. We acted like things were fine, but the silence was a dead giveaway. On Thursday, I came home earlier than usual. Claire was upstairs, probably getting ready to head out again. Her phone sat beside her purse on the kitchen counter, same place she always left it. I wish I'd left it alone. But curiosity won. I hate that it did. In the stillness of the house, I picked it up. The screen lit up with a single preview from Elias. Had a great time today. Miss you already. That was all it took. I didn't need to read the rest. That one line told me everything I'd refused to see. A few moments later, Claire emerged from the upstairs hallway, her fingers adjusting one of her earrings. She paused abruptly when her eyes landed on me at the dining table, her phone lying face up in front of me. The lightness in her face disappeared instantly. Her voice was tight. What are you doing? I met her gaze. Waiting. For what exactly? I nudged her phone across the table toward her. For the truth. Her eyes flicked to the phone, then back to me. Her arms folded defensively across her chest. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. I raised an eyebrow. Am I? She shifted her weight, as if grounding herself. I'm allowed to have friendships. Friendships that end with, I miss you already? I asked. There was a pause. Then she exhaled and muttered, All right. We had lunch. I stayed still. With Elias. Yes, Gavin. With Elias. Because he actually listens when I speak. Because he sees me. I leaned back, my pulse hammering in my ears, though I kept my face blank. Then go where you feel seen, I said evenly. Her tone hardened. What is that supposed to mean? It means you've already chosen. I just needed to see it clearly. Her face faltered, like I'd struck a nerve. You're ready to throw our marriage away over some texts? Her voice cracked at the edges. I kept my voice quiet. No, that happened the moment you did. For a second, I thought tears might form, but Claire never let herself look weak. Instead, she drew herself up, her jaw tight. Maybe I should leave then. I gave a single nod. Maybe that's best. In one swift motion, she grabbed her phone, purse, and keys. No apologies, no hesitation, only fury. Sharp, precise. The front door slammed with enough force to rattle the walls. I sat in the silence she left behind, the weight of it settling over me like a slow-moving mist. And in that stillness, a strange realization crept in. I didn't miss her. She didn't come home that night. And though I wish I could say I lay awake tormented by second thoughts, the truth was far simpler. I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, the sky hung low, gray and cold. But something inside had shifted, something small but undeniable. A burden I hadn't even known I was carrying had been lifted. I made a cup of coffee, toasted a bagel, and sat at the kitchen table, her contact info staring back at me from my phone screen. I didn't call. Instead, I stood up, walked into the garage, and returned with a stack of empty boxes. I began collecting her belongings, clothes, heels, makeup collecting dust. One by one, I packed it all, without stopping to think or feel. Midway through, I heard the crunch of her tires in the driveway. She walked in like nothing had changed. "What the hell is this?" I stood, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Exactly what you asked for." "You can't just toss my stuff into boxes," she snapped. "You left," I said calmly. "I'm just following through." She glanced at the open boxes, her expression flickering with disbelief. "This is insane, Gavin." I shook my head. "No, it's finally making sense." Her mouth opened to argue, but the words never came. For a moment she looked at me, really looked, and something in her face shifted, just a crack in the armor. "Gavin, we can still fix this." I looked at her, steady and certain. "You don't fix what you abandon." For the first time, I saw real fear in her expression. She began backing away slowly. Then she turned, slammed the door behind her, and sped off. I remained standing, surrounded by half-packed boxes, feeling lighter than I had in years. That's when it hit me. Every time I picked up her calls, every time I gave in to guilt, I handed her power over me again. And I was done doing that. Weeks passed. One evening, I pulled into the driveway after a late shift and saw her sitting on the front steps. Her mascara was smudged, and her hair looked like it hadn't seen a brush in hours. She jumped to her feet as I approached. "Gavin, please don't do this." I walked past her and unlocked the door. "You shouldn't be here." She followed me in. "We're not over. You're just hurt. I get that. But we can rebuild." I dropped my keys on the counter without looking at her. "You're right. I was hurt. But now? I'm just tired." Her voice grew sharper. "So, you're walking away over one mistake?" I turned to face her fully. It wasn't just one. It was the comments when you thought I couldn't hear, the texts you sent behind my back, the constant erosion of who I was, and you didn't even notice. She opened her mouth to reply but said nothing. I reached for the folder on the counter and held it out to her. Her hands trembled. "What's this?" "Divorce papers." She took them slowly, her voice barely audible. This isn't you." I held her gaze. "No. And this thing between us? This isn't you either. Not anymore." She stood frozen, staring down at the folder in her hands, and in that moment, I knew it was over, and I was finally okay with that. She set them on the table with a quiet precision, her movements controlled, almost ceremonial. When her eyes met mine, they were devoid of any softness. "You're choosing wrong," she said, her voice cold and steady. "Maybe I am," I replied, "but it's still my choice." She didn't bother with a response, just reached for her bag, slung it over one shoulder, and walked out the door. This time, I didn't watch her go. I just closed the door behind her and turned the lock, not to keep her out, but to stop myself from running after her. The room felt different once she was gone, not empty, just changed. There was a strange clarity in the silence, as if I could finally inhale without restriction. Time passed. Days slipped by. I settled into the quiet quicker than I expected. One evening, I sat on the back porch with a beer in hand, watching the sky bleed with the colors of dusk. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. Claire. Again. "I miss you. Please, Gavin." I stared at the screen for a moment longer than I should have, then powered the phone down and set it face down. There was no anger left, no heartbreak, no lingering pain. Only closure. Weeks blurred into a month. The divorce papers showed up. I signed without hesitation. Even Mira reached out once. She offered some half-hearted excuse on Claire's behalf. I ignored that too. What caught me off guard wasn't the absence of what I'd lost. It was how little of it I actually missed. I picked up running again, signed up for a woodworking class, took a solo trip into the mountains, something Claire would have scoffed at, calling it a waste of time or a midlife crisis. But it wasn't that. It was the first time in years I felt unburdened. Sure, there were moments when my thoughts drifted back. Her laugh when she thought no one was listening. The way she used to lean against me like gravity had made the decision for her. But then, I'd remember that final look she gave me, so distant, so deliberate, and the choice she made while pretending it didn't matter. Some fractures run too deep to repair. Some paths, once taken, don't loop back. 6 months on, I was sitting in a new cafe downtown when I saw her. Claire. She looked worn down, thinner somehow, like life had been unkind and she hadn't dodged much of it. She didn't notice me, too caught up in a loud phone call, her hand slicing the air as she paced outside. I watched from behind the glass, sipping my coffee, and I felt nothing. No resentment, no longing, just space between us. I left quietly through the side exit, without her ever knowing I'd been there. That evening, Mira messaged again. Still trying, I guess. She said Claire was with Elias now, that things weren't going well, and that she looked miserable. I read the message, then deleted it. I wasn't interested in updates. I didn't need to see her fall apart. I simply didn't care anymore. I'd walked away from that story for good. That night, back in my house, finally my space, filled with things that reflected who I was, wrapped in a silence that felt peaceful instead of lonely. I found myself thinking of that night at Mira's party. The joke. That one moment when everything you thought was solid just cracked. And how sometimes that's the best thing that can happen. Because here's the truth. Claire didn't destroy me. She woke me up to what I'd been refusing to admit. I used to believe that love meant staying no matter what. Swallowing pain, smoothing over cuts with smiles, pretending none of it left a mark. But I've grown since then. Love isn't about endurance. It's a direction you move in, not a storm you survive. Before turning in, I checked my phone one last time. Nothing waiting, no messages, no missed calls. Exactly right. I turned off the light, lay down, and smiled to myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting on anyone else. Everything I needed was already with me. And if Claire ever wondered what it was that finally made me leave, what broke the spell, she'd never really understand, because it wasn't some huge betrayal that drove me away. It was every tiny cut she assumed I'd learned to live with, until one day, I couldn't. And by then, I was already gone. Far beyond her reach, not hers to hurt anymore. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.